Hey everyone, Cory from Aquarium Co-op, and today I want to have a conversation about this relic, the thing that you've seen at every club auction, every garage sale, every old aquarium ever, the Undergravel filter. If you don't know anything about it, it's a filter that goes underneath the gravel, it pulls the water down through it, and up a tube and back out. And it's a very, very simple form of filtration, much like a sponge filter. And I just want to have a conversation about it. And so when I say that, I actually want to read your comments. I want you guys to talk back and forth. I want you to say, I've been using one for this long. I run into these problems, or I don't run into these problems, and we can all learn together because I have been playing with them for the last, 20 years, but really more intensely in the last couple of years. And, full transparency, we now make our own. Like, that's what this is. You could buy it on our website right now. It's launching as of this video, basically, but I want to not change the conversation. The conversation I want to have is, why have we demonized or villainized the Undergravel filter? What problems are we actually running into? And why is the conversation this or a sponge filter? Or a canister filter, or a sump? Why can't it be both? And so here's my thoughts on it to start a conversation with everybody. And so an example right off the get-go, behind me, it's a 150-gallon tank. The side over here, Undergravel filter. The other side, no Undergravel filter. So I'm not even running a full Undergravel filter, and we'll talk about that a little bit. I am running a canister filter, but the only thing I'm losing by running an Undergravel is a little bit. You can see the gravel's a little bit thicker than that side. And so it's because you have a plate down there, right? And so one of my thoughts is, if you're already running gravel or crushed coral or something like that, why not? What's the reason to not run this? And I don't have a good one. So I started running them. And to me, it just only adds more filtration capacity. Not that everybody needs more capacity, but I personally believe that every aquarium does need an air source, whether it's a sponge filter, an air stone, a bubble wall, an Undergravel filter, however you want to do it. I do think every aquarium benefits from the circulation and keeping oxygen levels up. Now, what I think we basically go, well, am I going to do my whole aquarium with an Undergravel filter? And you might say no, it might be expensive, whatever. But the question I want to pose is, why not do part of an aquarium? So imagine you just have this as a 10-gallon plate. You use 2 of these to do an entire 10-gallon. Well, a lot of my 10 gallons are only running 1. And so I've got this plate, and it's got about 2 inches of gravel or 1.5 inches of gravel on it. And all that surface area is more than a sponge filter. And yet you don't have to have the sponge filter sitting there. Instead, you have one uplift tube, and you've got the gravel. And it doesn't have to be the whole thing. And so I think there's a conversation to be had about that, of like, well, what if you just had one in the middle of a tank? What if you had one in the middle of a rock pile where you had wood or rock and you just wanted it to come up out of the center so you wouldn't even see it? Spoiler alert, our system can do that, but it doesn't have to be the whole thing. And so I think that's worthy of discussion. The other thing is, why is it this or that? That part I think we need to think about, because when it's talked about online, oh, you don't run Undergravel filters, they're bad, they clog, they do the thing, whatever they're going to say about it. But every filter clogs. Everything has to be maintained. Some people say, oh, well, you can't maintenance it. And that hasn't been my experience. In my experience, if I gravel vac, it gets it clean. When you look under a tank, you can see the bottom, you're like, wow, it basically looks clean. And so it looks just as clean as gravel vacuuming a tank that just has gravel. Now, there are some downfalls in that it doesn't work with sand, doesn't work with a soil base, or, whether it's like actual dirt or clay soil or clay to, buffer pH, or just a plant soil. So it won't work for those. But this is purely if you were already running crushed coral or normal gravel. I think this is a big win. In fact, it fixed a lot of problems we were having at the store with crushed coral not buffering fast enough for our auto water change system. This fixed that. That was just kind of a happy accident, honestly. We were already testing and doing things, and I said, let's try it over there. And it helped. And so the other thing I love about Undergravels is they give the most polished water in my experience, because you've got all these different gravel sizes in there. It'll start collecting debris, and as it collects debris, it kind of shrinks on it, and meaning that as it gets more clogged, it'll pull smaller and smaller particles out. Now, if you never service it, of course it'll clog. But it's just like a canister filter or a sponge filter. The more it clogs, the smaller the particles it'll take out, the better job it'll do. But eventually it'll choke itself out if you don't do anything. And I think there's the conversation that I'm having is that why not try some? Go, I'm just going to put one plate in a big tank and we'll see what it does. And I don't think you're ever going to get to a point where it crashes your tank, it clogs, it does all these things. I think with neglect, that definitely happens, but I think that happens with all types of tanks. If you go, I ran this tank, I didn't clean the canister filter for 10 years. Of course it broke down at some point. Of course things happened. And I think we kind of think about old crusty fish rooms or tanks or stores that like weren't taken care of well and they're running underground filter and that was a problem. And you remember that and not remember, oh, that store was great and it was running underground filter and that kind of stuff. And so what we're seeing is we're seeing clear water. We're seeing, oddly enough, faster cycle times. Not that that's a big problem for us, but just a sidebar, like, oh, that's interesting. Like it is cycling faster. Like in Randy's fish room, that tank cycled first, even though they're all identical, set up at the same time, same water change, same start with ammonia and bio rings. It cycled much faster and the water got clear. So it didn't have the bacteria bloom. It had enough surface area for everything just to grab on. And so, yeah, that's the conversation that I want to pass off to you guys is, have you used one? How long have you used it for? And what are the problems that you ran into? Because I think most of them are solvable with community. We go, oh, well, here's what I did. I gravel vacked it every 2 months, or I did this, or I did that. And, you know, I could see like, is 3 inches better than 2 inches, better than 1 inch? I've got some digging fish. Is that problematic? You know, there's different, you know, if you've got water coming up here, whether it's power head or whether it's air, if they dig a hole over here, most of the filtration might still be happening back here because it's path of least resistance. If this was to get clogged up and it's going through here, but the hole's over here because the fish dug down, it still might be path of least resistance. So there's a lot of things to think through. Also, in my experience, I've got some tanks that run scuds. They go through the gravel and they eat stuff. Those tanks, when I gravel vac them, I'm basically gravel vacuuming scuds by the ounce and almost no debris out of it because they're cleaning it. So I also put some live blackworms in some, and they seem to be thriving in the undergravel tanks as well. And so I think that we're going to crowdsource our way to the best optimal undergravel filter setup for you, because you will be different than me. You might have lots of goldfish. I might have guppies. I might overfeed. You might underfeed. I might gravel vac every 6 months. You might gravel vac every week. I have auto water change. Maybe you don't. I might feed frozen food. You're feeding dry food. You might be feeding live foods. I might be feeding, you know, Wardley's pellets. There's all these factors that go into it, but yet we've distilled down an undergravel filter into a yes or no question, basically. And the answer from the internet is no. Where when we talk about almost any other filtration, it's like, oh, what size of tank, what animal? In that case, oh, your African cichlids in a 75? Let's go with an FX6, right? Oh, your goldfish in a 75? FX6. Swordtails in a 75? Let's go Fluval 406. And so, but with the undergravel, it's just a yes or no. There's no context to it. Do you have digging fish? Yes or no. Are you going to keep something like scuds or something? Yes or no. Are you willing to, you know, get a hose down there if you thought it was getting clogged up? Like there's ways around it. And I love the fact that when I have an undergravel filter, if the power goes out, a battery operated air pump keeps my tank going with actual filtration instead of the canister filter where it's kind of dead in the water. I love that aspect. And I run air in all of my aquariums, and I always will. And so I always want a sponge filter or an air stone or an undergravel filter. And I still run sponge filters. I have a canister filter running back there. I've got canister filters on my big tanks. Like everything has a place. And if you already own all the stuff, don't buy any new stuff. I always tell you that, don't buy new stuff. But if you're looking for something new to play with, or you want to go, maybe I could use a little bit more, I think there's a merit for the Undergravel filter plate. And so I would encourage people to try it instead of taking the word for it. If everyone around you loves mushrooms on their pizza and that's what's popular, I hate mushrooms on pizza. I don't like the taste of mushrooms. Doesn't mean it's not good. It's not for me. And so that's why I test everything. I want to take a bite. I want to go, hey, does that Undergrovel filter really work well for me? And I would argue that in the way I'm using them, they do work really well. And it's not an all or nothing thing. It doesn't have to be the whole bottom. It doesn't have to be the only type of filtration. You could run one plate in one corner, a sponge filter in another. You could run a hang-on back over here and a plate over here. You could run the full length bottom. You could do anything you want. Some other perks that we haven't talked about is that these are basically fry proof and shrimp proof. There's no one spot that's heavy, sucking, so it's going to suck up fry or anything like that. So that's a really nice perk. I would say you get optimal, aeration and oxygen to plant roots, and you can deliver nutrients there. And there's a lot, I think, of little perks. But I do think that there is a downside, and the downside is if you never maintenance it, I do think it would become a problem. But I also think I could say that for every other filter out there. And so the other thing that up until recently now of this video, I think Undergravel filters have been kind of expensive. As in, if you buy the big plates, like this one would take 2 big plates. It was going to be like $200 to do it. That's prohibitive. You may as well get a canister filter or something like that. The other thing being that there hasn't been a lot of technology because they're not selling well. They're not being innovated on. And, this is going to be a weird statement. I don't want it to be like, oh, he's too full of himself. But I've always loved sponge filters. And as we did better on YouTube and things like that, and our company sold sponge filters have become, I believe this, I don't have factual data, but I believe they've become more popular. When I first started the hobby, you could never find a sponge filter like in a Petco or a PetSmart, anything like that. Now you can walk in and they have them. They're overpriced in my opinion, but they have them. That's a huge step. That means the general public now could walk into a store and just get a sponge filter and not have to use hang-on back cartridges and the money grab systems that are out there. And now, we did what we think is the best sponge filter, the easy flow uplift system and coarse sponge and all of that. And then I moved on basically, and I go, that's great. I think that's about as good as we can get it. We've made it slightly better. It's a pretty simple device. And then Undergravel filters, same thing. We wanted to put our flavor on it. And so I'll do a whole in-depth video, but one of the big differences that we have is our plates are tiny. So this kit will do up to a 20 long. And so like our plates are only this big. So you could make tiny little nano filters if you wanted. You could put them together because they're made to go together, just like this. You just pop them right together. And I could do the 800-gallon aquarium or a giant aquarium. They're also modular in the fact that you can do them any way you want. And so you can build shapes like this one. It's got a hole in the middle. Why does it have a hole in the middle, Cory? I don't know. Maybe I got a giant rock there, or for some reason I can't get to it to gravel vac. I don't know why, but you can do it. You could make just around the outside of the aquarium. You could do anything. Now with ours here, let me put a couple pieces together. You can do them vertically. So I built it or designed it in a way that they're equal. So what does that mean? You can decide which way you want the Undergravel filter. So you could have it be vertical, so front to back basically, or you can go side to side. And the good news is you can do both. So you could have it set like this. And why? Now the next question is, why would I do that, Cory? Well, here's our uplift, right? So a normal uplift, right? You have to put it in one of the corners. That's it, right? You get the tube where you break the things half the time, right? And you have to put it in one of the designated spots in the filter plate that they designated when they designed it. That's all you can do, right? So put that off to the side. With ours, you can put it anywhere you want because it just slides on. So it's got this little track right here. And try to show that better to you. You can go anywhere you want. So it doesn't have to be in the corner of a tank. It could be in a little bit. It could also be, you know, in the middle of the tank. If I just do this, I can go all the way forward, right? And so you can also put as many as you want. You could put 5 of them back here. You know, the kit comes with 2. 1 in a corner is a typical thing. But in a scenario, I'm running out of space here. In a scenario where you do have maybe you've got a cube tank. Guess what? Rimless cube tanks, they don't make undergravel filters for those. These do. Ours does. And so maybe I want it right here instead. I could literally take it apart, pull this off, put it back together, right? And I want it here. So I'm just going to come over and slide it on right there. Oh, actually, I missed one edge, so let me slide that on a little bit better here. It's easier to do when you have it on table. There we go. So now it can live there, or I can move it up to here. And so you could put one there. I could also take one and put it right here. You could do anything you want. I could put 2 in the center. So we've got that modularity. Then with that, I'm going to take this back off. So you've got the modular system. That was a big key. So one of it was the kit can do, you know, we just talked about how you don't necessarily have to cover a full bottom. You could do a couple of 5-gallon tanks. You could do a couple of 10-gallon tanks. You can do one 20 long. You do a 29. You could take that one kit and just do that like I did. You could put 2 kits together. And so the modularity, what I wanted to bring to this was, let's say you do a 10-gallon. Well, you've got extra plates left around. Like with all of these, I still have plates because you get 20 plates. Well, you can take those extra plates and you could go build another one on another tank. Or maybe you only want a row along the very back of your 55. You can do that. Or in some older videos you saw, I ran undergravel filter in my sumps so that I could get crushed coral to buffer the water on the 800-gallon tank. You could do that. You can make any size you want from the same kit. So we can keep costs down on our website. We can, in the stores we sell to, instead of going, you have to carry a 5-gallon, a 10-gallon, a 20-gallon, a 20 long kit, a 55 kit, a 75 kit, and up. Now you just carry one kit. And if we look on the box here, right? So if you have a standard 10-gallon tank, it takes 10 plates. Guess what? You get 20. You can do 2 10s for the price of this, $24.99. A 20 high uses 16 plates. You'd have 4 left over. A 40 breeder uses 36 plates. You'd have to use 2 kits, so it costs you about $50 if you want to carpet out a full 30 or 40 breeder. A 55 uses 32 plates, right? So again, 2 kits, you'd have 8 plates left over. So $50 is a 55. 75 uses 48 plates. So that one would take 3 kits, but you'd have enough left over to do another 10-gallon or something like that. And that's if you're fully doing it. I think that's important to know that you wouldn't necessarily have to fully do it. So the conversation's still here. Like, obviously, I'm convinced that it's a viable option. Do I think every tank should only ever run undergravel filter? No. Do I think every tank should only ever run sponge filter? No. I think it's a viable tool in the chest, though, of we could use it in some places. I'm trying to think of where I wouldn't use it. I wouldn't use it with sand. I wouldn't use it in a tank where it's really hard to gravel vac, my 800-gallon probably. In the sump, I could do it. And I'm excited to see what people come up with, because I think you're gonna come up with some things just like the shrimp keepers do, where they use them in little boxes for the soil to buffer pH. I think we're gonna see some people innovate with that in terms of like live bearers and other things, and just all the different shapes, and the fact that one kit can do it all, and it's low profile. And you can see here, like, there's little optimizations everywhere. I spent a lot of time, energy on this, but like, so this undergravel filter plate, right? When you connect 2 of them together, well, they don't even connect together. You put 2 together, you got this dead spot. There's no cutouts or anything like that on any of the sides. All of ours have cutouts on the sides, and they all made up so that when you put them together, they don't block each other, right? So now you can still like see all the way through that. All of them line up, and they're completely modular. And one kit will do any size aquarium. And when you have leftover parts, it can do your next aquarium. You can make any shape you want. Like there's just, and at the end of the day, it's all still plastic. It's all still a little bit of air and some plastic. I guess I didn't, maybe you've never seen this before. The uplift system that we have, the easy flow system here. I'll go through the rest of it while I'm doing this here. Let me get some stuff set up. I'm using the wrong part. There we go. Gotta grab this part. And we'll put this on it. Come on. So now you have the uplift. You can go anywhere on it, right? We'll slide that on. It can go anywhere. And then you've got the airline goes on the outside. So that's a big important piece. Why does that matter? Well, if you put the airline inside, the bubbles hit it and they become this bigger bubble that goes blub, 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 blub. And you get the noise factor, which I didn't talk about earlier. They can be loud. This dampens that. We have it adjustable so that you can adjust the height. I actually have the wrong apparatus here. Hold on. I have multiple kits on my desk. This actually goes like this. This to make it adjustable. So you can adjust it to the height of your aquarium. So whether it's a low 10-gallon or a 20 long, or you're going, I need this in a 150 or something like that, you can keep making it taller and shorter to get it right. If you put it right at the water surface, it's quieter. You get better flow going. I'm going to take this part off because it's long. And then the uplift system here, these are all custom parts and molds we made. We make it so it takes an air stone. We include the weighted air stone that won't clog up very often at all, so minimal service. But as this sits on your filter plate, it's covered in gravel and everything, maybe the gravel comes up to here, you can just take this whole apparatus off and service it if you wanted to. You just boop, and there you go. And so even though the airline tubing's on the outside, maximizing your flow, the inside just has that right there. And so we've made, from what we can tell, as optimal of an undergravel filter as you could. So if you already love undergravels, you're probably going to love this one even more. If you've never used one, well, you might not know how good it is compared to the old school ones. But yeah, so there's ours. It's $25. I still think, instead of the sales pitch, which that's at the end here, so maybe you guys will buy it, maybe you won't. I still think the most important thing is these are nearly free at every garage sale and club auction, and they're still perfectly usable. And I think as a hobby, we're sleeping on undergravel filter just for increasing capacity, some of the, the quirks and the benefits we can use it for when you can buy a plate for $5 at a garage sale or something and then use it. Now, things can snap and things get old, so it's not always just a win-win, but I think we've villainized it unfairly, and we don't talk about the good use cases of, like, it doesn't take up much room in the aquarium. It's very simple. If you're already gravel vacuuming using gravel, you're already automatically cleaning it. There's all those little perks that go with it, and I think there's something to that. But I want to hear more. I can't say that enough. I want to hear more. Have you been using one for 10, 20, 30, 50 years? Have you used one for 11 minutes? Did yours make your tank explode? Did it make it run really well? On the forum, if you go hop on our forum, a lot of people are like, yeah, you know what? Actually, one of my best running tanks was undergravel filter. It ran with no problems for many years. And that's been my experience. I've got tanks that run multiple types of filtration. I've got some that only run this. I've got some that are only running one plate worth, or one section worth. I've got all the variants. And from what I can tell is basically they're all good. And I've got like a 50 variations because we tried so many different things, but for the most part, I don't want to take any of them out. I'm going, I kind of just want to convert more. And so maybe I'll be eating my words in 10 years. I don't think that'll be true because I can't from the tanks I look underneath, I'm not seeing buildup or anything like that. And I'm seeing good plant growth, and I'm seeing the fish thriving and being happy, and it's not loud. It's not taking up extra electricity. I can run it with an air pump. It's got all the things that I want for my style of aquarium keeping. And I think I'll end that with this. I like keeping my aquariums easy, hence so many easy products. You know, we try to make things easier. I like simple. I like it so that I'm going to be out of town for a few weeks in Brazil filming underwater, and my wife, if something goes wrong, needs to be able to fix it, needs to be able to plug in an air pump to a generator, anything like that. I like the stability, and I like easy. So I want it easy so I can breed the fish and keep the fish, and not, you know, I'm not as much of a gearhead. I went through that phase if I had every piece of gear and make it complex, and now I like simplicity. So yeah, let me know what you have experienced with Undergravel filters. I genuinely will be reading them. I'll reply to a bunch of them, and I'm hoping that this is a video that sticks around for years and years and years and years, and you come back in that 5, that 10, that 15-year thing and go, hey, it is working, or it totally fell apart, and here's why. Here's what I'm going to try next to prevent that thing, because I think there's a lot of learning, being that we kind of cast them away 10, 20, 30 years ago, and now that knowledge transfer for people that did use them for 20 years straight isn't around as much anymore. It's buried on Google. Those people might not be showing up to your clubs. They're not be talking. Maybe you are, though. Maybe this comment section will be the thing. So leave me a comment. I'll read it. And thanks for hanging out. And Undergravel filters. New hotness? Old hotness? Still sucks? Still great? You be the judge.